What's the story, everyone? Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. My name is Aaron. I'm delighted to be joined here today by Daniel Hussey from Tackling Sport and Pundit Arena. We're here to preview the Dublin footballers and hurlers ahead of the upcoming National Football League and Hurling League, of course, as well. I suppose first of all, Dara, great to have you on. I suppose we had the hurling action at the weekend, so I suppose great to have the GAA back now in full swing.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Like I was just saying to you off air, it's great, having another alternative to watching Premier League football, to be honest with you. And it was amazing seeing Antrim in particular, like, because hurling is, like, not to get too down into this, like, but it's a very closed shop, and there's a lot of snobbery in the likes of Antrim and stuff like that from certain quarters. So the fact they went and beat Clare, to be honest with you, is pretty chuffed about it. And it just kind of shows you that these counties, if they're given the kind of support, they can do it. So that bodes well for Liam McCarthy. They're making their return to Liam McCarthy, and there was just brilliant storylines from the weekend, and we haven't even had the football yet. So it's as I said, it's just brilliant to have it back, to be honest with you. And I'm excited for this weekend as well.
Yeah, 100%. Like definitely seeing Antrim beating Clare, like definitely one of the shocks of the weekend, I suppose, and just good in general, I suppose, to have a lot of action back, I suppose, across all the different divisions in hurling. I suppose, much like myself, I'd imagine anyway, for yourself, it's been great being a Dublin fan over the past 10 years or so. Like, I mean, especially from a football point of view anyways, I mean, I suppose they haven't done too much wrong over in that 10-year period.
No, it's a joy watching them, and like you go into a random National League game, January 2018, February 2019 or whatever, and you just see an impeccable performance from a team that are only in second gear. It's like the likes of Ryan Fendon, Conor Callan, Kieran Kilkenny, like these are just incredible footballers, like without mentioning Stephen Cluxton. So yeah, it's been amazing. Like I grew up with the, early noughties era, like 2004 onwards. And I can, recall every single county that knocked us out: Kerry 04, Tyrone 05, Mayo 06, Kerry 07, with Tyrone 08, Kerry 09. Cork 10, and in a weird way I kind of look back at those moments a bit more fondly, because you kind of grew up and we always wanted that coveted All Ireland, and I guess it's the 5 in a row was something I really wanted to do, just because it was, has never been done and unprecedented. But 6 in a row last year, I don't know whether it was COVID or anything, it didn't quite mean a big deal to me personally, to be honest with you. I'm not going to lie to you. Like it was great seeing Dublin win, because you've kind of grown up watching a lot of those players, but I couldn't sit here and say I was absolutely enthralled, excited. I wanted a good match more than anything. But yeah, maybe crowds coming back this year could get a bit more into supporting the Dublin as opposed to looking at the championship as a whole. But yeah, it's almost like we're 6 in a row going for 7. I don't know, maybe I don't have that rootless streak in me that a lot of Dublin fans seem to have, and that's great that they're enjoying it. I'm not enjoying as much as I did maybe the 3-4 in a row, possibly 5 in a row. Like I just want to go back to losing by a point to Mayo in 06 and crying my eyes out in the upper Davin stand. Like that's what I remember fondly. But
you have to be careful what you wish for now.
Well, that's it. That's the other side. Like a couple of years and I'll be wanting it more. But yeah, no, there were great battles over the year. Like the Dublin team's incredible, take nothing away. What they've done, Jim Gavin and Desi Farrell taking over that. It is a joy, and it's an honour going into Croke Park and watching those players play. Like it's amazing.
Yeah, it's a weird one for myself as well, because like on one side of things, you kind of want that ruthless streak to continue. You want to just beat everyone comfortably, but at the same time, I was kind of similar to yourself in terms of the early, 2004, 2005. Like that was really when I started going to Gaelic football matches and seeing them play. And I was 16 when Dublin won the All Ireland in 2011, and it was their 16th year without winning it. So I suppose it's different for the generation that are probably watching Gaelic football in Dublin nowadays, because they see Dublin as this team that just can't lose. Like I'd imagine there's probably going to be a lot of Dublin fans whenever they do lose that probably break down completely, because it's something that just it's kind of crazy really how successful they have been over the past, like winning 6 in a row and all that.
Yeah, I think I'm similar age at 16 in 2011 as well, so, or maybe I might have been 17. But like you said, I grew up like the Tyrone replay. I was so convinced we were going to win the first day, even more convinced the second day, and I think it's 2-18, 1-14, so 7-point defeat. 06, then you had the Battle of the Hill, and then 07 Kerry. That we lost by 2 points. Stephen Cluxton had the ball 1 point down, and he kicked the ball to the sideline. Kerry worked it up, scored the second point in injury time to win by 2. Then 08 we got absolutely battered, and 09, and that was the low. I was like, we're never going to win an All Ireland. We have never been further away. And then when we lost to Meath by 5 goals, I vividly remember my dad, and he'd never. I don't think he's ever booed a team in his life, and he booed the team off the pitch. And to be honest with you, he wasn't the only one. I think a lot of people wanted Gilroy's head. And I remember sitting in Croke Park, there was 20,000 of us watching Dublin Tipperary in the qualifiers round 2, and we were brutal. Like we beat them well, but we were brutal. And it might have been Armagh. I can't remember who else we got. And then we went and beat Tyrone, and yeah, and we should have beaten Cork that year, which would have been, I think we would have won that, or sorry, not Cork. Yeah, we should have beaten Cork, and we would have had down in the All-Ireland final. And then your chance is gone. Then Kerry go in heavy favourites 11 after that Donegal game. Yeah, they're the memories you kind of like. And to be honest with you, like the games Dublin had, say like the 2016 and 17 battles with Mayo, they were absolutely incredible games. And the 2019 All-Ireland final aside, I think from 2018 onwards, I just haven't had the same buzz about it. Aside from those 2 incredible All-Ireland finals in 2019, which I think standalone were incredible games given, how historic they were, but I just haven't had the same connection. It's not the Dublin team fault. They're too good. I don't know, like maybe like I was kind of like, because I'm an Arsenal fan, that's going really badly. Obviously the Irish soccer team, and someone said to me, you have the Dubs. I'm like, well, that's going too well at the moment, so just nothing really exciting. But yeah, like it's as I said, what Jim Gavin's done, Desi Farrell, absolutely incredible stuff, and it's a joy watching those players.
Yeah, because I suppose it's the journey to success, isn't it? Like it's you're kind of building yourself up. You especially with 2011 in particular. I think that was probably the main, I suppose, moment for most Dublin fans, because obviously the 2 years previous, you had that defeat to Kerry when they absolutely hammered us. Like, what even memories do you have of the 2011 final? I don't even know if you were at the game, and what do you even think as well was kind of like the turning point for the Dubs, even in that kind of season, I suppose, and after the Mead game in 2010 as well.
Yeah, well, just maybe a memory on the 20. You mentioned the 2009 All Ireland quarter final. We were actually on holidays in San Diego. Like our uncle lives over there, and we basically went to an American or an Irish bar in America at about 6 in the morning, and we got there like just before throwing. And there was myself, my dad, and my younger brother. So it was like $20 per person, no matter what age you were, to watch the game. Like there was before GAA Go, obviously. So he handed over the first $20 as the ball got thrown in. The second one as Gooch got the ball, and the third one as it went in the back of the net. And honestly, that was the end of the game. Like, because after I was like, we're not going to win here. And then obviously 2010, but like 2011 was a weird because we just got the season tickets into Cusack, but my dad wanted one of his mates to go with him. So long story short, I went with one of my mates onto the hill, and it was, believe it or not, my first time on the hill for the
Wow.
which was that All Ireland final. And it was just crazy because, to be honest, all the way through the game I was like, Kerry, like before going into the game, Kerry are going to win. During the game, just Kerry were always at arm's length, and I think it was a Gooch got the point to put them 4 up before, and Kevin Mack got the goal in the place, and it was kind of a blur from there on. Like, Kevin Nolan got a point, Bernard Brogan got a point, and then it upstepped Stephen Cluxton. But the scenes, like myself and them, I made mine. We were 2 old lads, the 4 of us, just all on top of each other. You think now COVID, now you'd never do that again, but it was wild, like, to be honest with you. But my personal favorite memory of that era is actually the 2 years later in that 2013 All Ireland semi final. And it's for some reason, like I started going out with a few of my mates to the game, having a couple of points before, and all of a sudden you're in that category of the Dubs that turn up 5 minutes before throw. And we ended up being really at the front of the hill because we were so late, not late, but we were like, 2 minutes before throwing. So we ended up being like, we had a terrible angle for the whole game, but we were right beside Kevin McMenamin when he scored, and the place just went absolutely nuts. Like, I don't like that. That was peak, I think, because while we won the first All Ireland, I was listening to Kerry Cousins telling us how lucky we were. And obviously we didn't make it in 12, and then to beat them in 13 was pretty sweet. And beat them by 7 points as well, similar to 77 semi-final. So it was magical memories. Like, and that's like, I don't mind Dublin winning every All Ireland from now on. I just want those kind of games where it's tight with 5 minutes to go. I think that makes it more exciting. You always want to win like that, I think.
100%, yeah. Like the 13 semi final in particular, I was at that game as well. Like it was iconic stuff. Probably the best game I've ever been to and ever seen. Like the 2011 game, that was the only All Ireland final I've ever been to, and it was definitely like, I mean, the scenes that, like, I suppose when Kevin McManaman scored that goal, I remember we had a couple of Kerry fans beside us at the time, me and one of my mates, and they went missing for the final 10 minutes. I think after that Kevin McManaman goal went in, I think they just left, because like it was like, and I kind of don't blame them, because things got really messy. Like there was people going from one end of the stand, like behind us, who were in front of us. There was people falling over. I think I lost my phone at one point. I mean, crazy scenes altogether. But 2013, yeah, like probably the best game I've ever been to, and probably I don't know, it might be probably one of the best games of all time, maybe.
Oh, it's amazing. And even watching it back on YouTube, you've Darren Maloney and Kevin McStay commentating on it, and the way they commentate, just magic. Like that, when that kick out's gone, it's anyone's game until like a lucky bounce comes our way. And yeah, and my favorite thing in Croke Park, you mentioned like Kerry fans and even Mayo fans are battles. It's when, Kerry or Mayo get a point and you're on the hill so you can see the whole stadium. You start seeing these pockets of Mayo, the loud Mayo fans, if you have Upper Hogan, and you start looking around just going, geez, we're surrounded here, because obviously Dubs have the majority of the hills, so maybe Mayo in particular would outnumber you the rest of the stadium. But even to give Mayo a mention, don't want to give Kerry too much, because it's been Mayo that really pushed us the last few years. There's nothing better than Dublin Mayo All-Ireland semi-final or final in Croke Park, because Mayo it's basically 50-50 in the stadium, and those fans are absolutely incredible. And in the Dubs, we kind of wake up a bit because we need to kind of find our voice, and those games are just epic. When Aidan O'Shea has a ball and you're on the hill and everyone's telling, shouting all sorts of them, that's the moments you kind of live for, really. And Killian O'Connor gets an awful time as well. I don't know what it is about those two lads. They must be all right.
Yeah, I think maybe with Killian O'Connor, it's just because he's really good and he just causes Dublin so many problems. I think that's the main reason probably why he gets abuse. I know Lee Keegan gets a bit of abuse as well, but again, it's just because they're great players. If they, at the end of the day, like if you're getting abuse off the hill, like you're probably doing something right for your own county, anyways. Like, and especially with Lee Keegan, Aidan O'Shea, these lads, like I know obviously in All Ireland finals they haven't always maybe performed to their absolute best. Don't think Aidan O'Shea's ever scored in a final from play anyway, as far as I remember. But I suppose those games in general with Mayo, like when you're thinking back to even 2015 as well, the two semi-finals. I suppose like it's harsh on them in many ways, because I feel like they probably deserve to at least win one of those games, but Dublin just always seem to have the extra edge, I suppose, especially with the bench and everything else as well.
Yeah, it's like, how much do you put it down to like Dublin really just seeing out games compared to Mayo? And then like I personally think there's a huge amount of luck when teams are so tight. Like it's literally just one ball comes off a post, one doesn't. Like you're right. Like personally, I think Mayo are definitely good for at least one of those All Irelands. Be it in 15, I think they'd have beaten Kerry if they got through. 16 and 17, particularly 17, I thought. And it's just, sorry, the 16 first game, I don't know how Dublin got out of that. Two own
Yeah,
goals, wasn't it?
two on goals. Yeah, I think they had something like only 2 points from play in the first half. Never been done before in an All Ireland final.
Well, like I've played GAA, I've played GAA for 20 years, and I remember one own goal in 20 years playing football. So like there you go, two in an All Ireland final. Like I understand there was chances being made, and yeah, it just seemed Dublin always managed to. And again, it's largely down to how incredible Dublin were. But Jesus, Mayo left a lot after them, and sometimes like you can put it all out there and you just don't win. So I think they get a little bit of hard time, particularly from the Dubs, in comment sections of a lot of articles I would read and stuff, and giving them a hard time. But they were definitely like good for one. They didn't get it. The team's it's going to take a couple of years for Mayo to get back. Like they obviously got to the All Ireland final. Their age profile is a lot younger than Dublin. I'd like to see them win one with O'Connor and O'Shea still there. If it's not at Dublin's expense, but yeah, no. To make an absolutely amazing rivalry in 20 years, it needed Mayo to win one of those All Irelands. It was a pity, like, and even that 14 semi-final replay, I actually went down to that against Kerry. They were two epic games, and the way they didn't win that, it was the start of it, really. But yeah, great memories. Like, and to be honest, I just want to get back to that 82,000 in Croke Park. Dublin Mayo or Dublin Kerry made the best team win, because they're just magic. And the standard of Gaelic football, I know it's got a hard time in recent years with the likes of Jim McGuinness coming on board, but me personally, at the top level, those top 4 or 5 teams, those games are absolutely incredible, and particularly when they're played at Croke Park in front of full stadium.
Yeah, and I suppose you might have Tyrone maybe potentially coming back, especially with new management in there as well, like in Conor McKenna, Cathal McShane. So that could be, the Tyrone Dublin rivalry could be something to watch out for, I suppose, in the next couple of years. I suppose, like, what did you make of that final ultimately last year against Mayo? Like, obviously, I suppose for most Dublin fans anyway, I think we were probably expecting it at the start of the year anyway to be either a Kerry or I suppose Kerry were coming through Munster, so that they would have been the most probable. But in the end, it was Mayo once again. So what did you think of that final, anyways?
Well, it's just typical. You have to have a small word on Kerry, like how they did that against Cork. It's just beyond me. It's laughable, really. Preparing for Dublin so much that you forget to beat the team in front. And just on Dublin, like I know they go into games like 20 points in the handicap and all this in Leinster, but they have never delivered a performance in Leinster since they started winning all this, since 2010, that hasn't been at least par, if not way better. Like they're just so ruthless, like the way they just disband the teams. The likes of Kerry maybe at times they're too busy worried about the Dubs, similar to they were too busy worried about Tyrone for a few years back in the early noughties. It was like I always used to side Kerry. They got a soft All Ireland in 04 and 06 because they had to beat Mayo, and then when it came up against a real team against Tyrone, they didn't do it. So I have to say Dublin probably got a soft All Ireland last year. Like the second best team in the country is Kerry, best player in the country is David Clifford, in my opinion, and they never got the opportunity to show it because they messed up, and that's down to the management and the players as well. Donegal, I think Dublin would have had Donegal's number, to be honest with you. Tyrone, we're still in a little bit of transition. Obviously, this year, like you said, they could potentially, although that's always seems the way with Tyrone. Like, they've got great forwards. They haven't really done it on the big day over the last few years. But fair play to Mayo for getting there. Like, they put it up to Dublin. They had a couple of chances. Like, they're early in the first half. I was thinking, geez, Dublin are all over the place. But they got the couple of goals. And they were just like ruthless. And the fact that Brian Howard and Paul Mannion didn't start that All-Ireland final. I don't know if that was Desi Farrell trying to put his own stamp on the team and maybe taking it too far, in the sense that nobody in the right mind. I know Brian Howard and Mannion had their kind of issues, either, injuries or whatever, but Brian Howard not to start that All-Ireland final was a bit ridiculous. I know he came on at half-time, but Dublin, like, they just saw it out well. Like, Cluxton, he didn't have the aggressive first half, then just nails every kick out in the second half. They just found a way to do it. But with 20 minutes to go, the game was over. It wasn't, as I said to you top of the show, I wasn't overly excited about it as a fan. But yeah, you have to credit to Dublin. And I think the best thing that happened to those players was that COVID break, because they put so much energy in that 5 in a row. And I actually think Jim Gavin got a lot of things wrong in that first game, like not moving Johnny Cooper off David Clifford sooner. Who did that recently? Yeah, Mikel Arteta did that with Danny Ceballos in the Europa League. Like, this is basic stuff. And I just think the pressure got to Dublin a lot, and they still managed to win it. And I think that took a lot out of them. And the fact they got that break between March and October, pretty much, and the lads went back to their clubs, and James McCarthy's actually on record saying that was a big part of them. They regrouped and they were fully motivated, and I think that played a major part, that break Dublin had. And they were way better than Mayo on the day, fully deserved it. If they played it 10 times, they'd probably win it 9. Like, they were just far better than them. So yeah, it was a pretty routine enough All Ireland. And be hopeful this year, like you mentioned, Tyrone, Kerry come back. I guess Mayo have another year on board, although I'm not quite sure of them with the amount of retirements they've had. But yeah, Dublin are just incredible. Like, I know everyone says Brian Fenton hasn't lost a championship game, but neither is John Small. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's ridiculous. And John Small's 28, like, so, and he's been on the scene since 2015, which is obviously a great year to come in if you're just going to play for Dublin. But yeah, they were just unbelievable.
Yeah, there's so many players in that team. Like, I think even Con O'Callaghan, who's coming in, he hasn't lost a game. Like, there's so much talent all across the board, really, that's come into Dublin over the past few years. I suppose it has had its critics, obviously, as well. And although I'm tired of talking about the whole Dublin dominance debate, like, I kind of wanted to get your opinion on it, I suppose, as well. Like, obviously you had Ray Kennellan coming out with an open letter last year, former Westmeath footballer, and he was kind of going through the facts, all the funding and everything else, and potentially splitting Dublin. Like, what was your take on all that?
Yeah, like, I'd be honest, I'd be like, they made a right mess of it, in the sense that 2004 Dublin, not just the inter-county team, but club football in Dublin, and needed a boost because we were losing players to other sports. So if you put your GAA hat on, we want as many club players playing GAA as possible, which has kind of led to, has partly led to this, in the sense that their intentions were correct. Like, every club in Dublin has a games development officer, where the county board pays half it and the club pays the other half. Now, for bigger clubs, they would have been able to afford to do that regardless. But like, I play for Geraldine Moorings. For a small club like ourselves, I've seen the incredible work that's gone on since, I'm not sure the exact year, maybe 2008 or 9 when we got one, maybe a little bit later. And the difference between then and now, it's just like a completely different club. And it's not a case that other clubs in Dublin have slowed down either. They've all gone on that upward trajectory. So it's like every club in Dublin, as long as they've got a good underage structure, they've got a good games development officer, has gone on that kind of path. The problem with other counties, like, and we've been over this 100 times, is they don't have that support in place to have it, and B, they don't even have possibly the population, in the sense that the amount of people wanting to play football and hurling, sorry, I should say. So it's an absolute mess now, because like per player, Dublin are probably getting too much anyway. But like the demand for Gaelic games is in Dublin and will continue to be in Dublin, and to a lesser extent cities like Galway and Cork. So where are we going to be in 10 years' time if nothing's done? It's going to be even worse. Like the divide is just going to, like, it's only going one way. Like Dublin, well, we'll still have great games against Kerry, Tyrone, and Mayo. Like the Leinster Championship might as well not exist, to be honest with you. It's a bit of a farce of a championship for the last few years. Has this played a part in the Dublin senior team? Like, yes, it definitely has, because like a lot of these players came through that games development officer, like and games development coaching, and it's little things like having that strength and conditioning coaching in those intercounty under 15 and 16 setups, that you're able to continue on. Like Brian Fenton is an absolute animal, but that's not happened over like 2 or 3 years. Like I saw a picture of him in his first All Ireland final 2015, and you compare that player to 2021 version now, and the 2021 version would absolutely rinse that 2015 player. Yet that 2015 player was arguably one of the best players in the country that year. So that just shows you that the strength and conditioning they had already, and they've just managed to layer it every year and every year. Like, so, like in terms of what can be done, like there's a reason it hasn't been sorted out. There isn't a great deal that can be done. Like obviously you could cut the funding to Dublin, which I think should happen. I think it should be spread a lot more equally to the likes of Kerry and Mayo. But like there is this, like it's amazing it's gone on this long, but the reality is that there will have to be a split in the championship. There'll have to be, like in club level and All Ireland, senior, intermediate, and junior. That's the best way to go about it. Like I think splitting Dublin's an absolute last resort. Like it's just, I would hate to see it personally, because like what happens if we get like North Southern versus South Dublin in All Ireland final? Like that was just gonna make things 10 times worse. Like the only thing we can hold on to now is you do get your Dublin Mayo games every year, your Dublin Kerry games. But the 2004 Sean Kelly, like who I think was a good president of the GA, he made that call in terms of sanctioning that extra funding for Dublin. It should have been pulled back a lot more, and I think Dublin, because now Dublin have so much sponsorship opportunities that they should be taking money from that. So if it was up to me, I would cut a lot of the GA funding going to Dublin, make Dublin becomes almost self-efficient themselves. That's one option. The other option would be to pool all sponsorship. So for example, Dublin get whatever, a couple of million a year, Leitrim going to get like whatever, 100,000, pool it all together, 32 counties, and split it between everyone. So you're still incentivized to get more sponsorship. It's just pooled between counties. That's fair, to be honest with you. It's not Leitrim's fault that they don't have the population. It's not Meath's fault that they can't compete with Dublin and Leinster. And it's not Cork's fault either, although they probably a mess themselves, in fairness. So like, I do want to say, like, Dublin did an incredible job. And I know a lot of people, like, they've set exactly what you need to do. Every county should do this, but they just can't, like, because they don't have the demand there for players. They don't have, like, you know, the coaches there. Like, it's not what works in Dublin doesn't necessarily work in Galway, for example. So they would be my couple of solutions, I guess. I don't know what your take is on it, but it's just going to get worse. And it seems COVID's almost delaying it. We'll just kick that can down the road and it'll be all right, which it won't. Like, it's just going to keep getting worse and worse.
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky issue, all right. Because definitely over, I suppose, as the more dominant that Dublin get, I suppose the more people that are gonna be speaking out about it. And I think splitting Dublin in 2 or 4 definitely isn't the answer, all right. Because you can imagine then, like what you said, like if North and South Dublin ended up in a All Ireland final or semi final, it would definitely, you know, cause a lot of issues. And I'd agree with you what you said about the club. Like I played for Whitehall up until I was about 18, 19. Like, and I remember when I first started, we didn't even have a pitch, we didn't even have a gym, and now there's a state-of-the-art pitch, there's a gym, and you know, you see some of the players that have come through in the past couple of years, like Cormac Costello, Owen O'Donnell, like a few others. Like, definitely 100% something does need to be done, all right, especially with the, you know, sponsorship money and funding and everything else. But it's a hard one because Dublin are such a big draw for the GA as well. Like, obviously, I know, like, probably the attendances have probably started to fall in the past couple of years, especially in Leinster, because a lot, like what you said, like, I know a lot of Dublin fans, even my dad, who, you know, I would have gone to a lot of games, but he doesn't bother anymore because he's like, what's the point? So, but I suppose at the same time, you know, getting to semi-finals and finals, they're going to be a big draw, especially with the fact that their own stadium essentially is in, you know, their own city.
Yeah, well, and it's important to know one thing I said, like, say, for example, that's, you know, I mentioned strength and conditioning, and the reason is it's not like the GA isn't funding any of that. It's funding these games development officers or coaches in clubs, which allows the county board who have extra resources from that sponsorship to put money into the likes of strength and conditioning, which I think kind of people get confused. But like you said, I think it was the day that Dublin played Galway in the All Ireland semi-final. It might have been 2018, and I was actually away at an Interrail myself, and I remember just tuning into the TV, and I was like, where is everybody? Like, and it was people said, oh, it's because they switched the All Ireland semi-finals to August. I personally think it was just a drop in demand of watching Dublin win every year. And I think it was 50,000 at that All Ireland semi-final, where they'd been full houses the previous couple of seasons. And it's just been like that with All Ireland semi-finals. I know they got 82 with the Dublin Mayo semi-final, which was 2019, I think. Yeah. So when the GA sees that drop in demand, I know with COVID, it's kind of messed everything up here. But GA is thriving in Dublin, like club, and it is amazing. Like you mentioned, the fact that Whitehall now can put like serious coaching and kids are getting such a better experience. But from that, as a result, you're going to continue getting good footballers. I know Kieran Whelan said recently that the production line in Dublin is not what it used to be. I would, respectfully completely disagree. Like, I don't think you're going to get a better talent than Kieran Archer at the moment. I don't think Kieran Whelan mentioned him, so, and he's come from St. Maur's, and that's an important point because I'm not saying St. Maur's weren't producing players in the past, but there's a club that's not the biggest in Dublin, but because of those, and this is me not being involved in St. Maur's, so I don't want to be too ignorant about it, but the chances are they've put a really good underage structure in place with their games development officer in schools, and you produce some players like Kieran Archer where other counties just aren't able to. So the important thing is, I know you mentioned Croke Park, like that's an easy fix for the GA. Like I thought the All-Ireland semi-final against Cavan should have been moved from Croke Park because there was no crowds there. It was the perfect opportunity. And I know Cavan came out to say that they play in Croke Park, but I just think it should be neutral venue to the All-Ireland final and neutral venue to the Leinster final. And there's no reason in particular that Leinster final should be in Croke Park, ticket demand aside, during COVID like this year. But I think there are a couple of easy fixes because it isn't fair that Dublin have essentially made Croke Park their home stadium. You see the players, especially the way they play, they're so widespread on the pitch. They're so used to it. And for example, Kerry play it once a year, or once or twice a year. So that's an easy fix to bring the chasing pack 5% closer to Dublin. It wouldn't make a difference in 99% of games, which is why there's no reason why the GA shouldn't do that. And I think Dublin fans, every single Dublin fan I've spoken to, would be delighted to get an away trip. Like, I know, again, COVID, but before that, we'd always look, what's the away trip? Geez, we'll go to Galway for Paddy's weekend or whatever a couple of years back. It's just the Dublin fans want to travel, and it's the GA just see the money signs, which is unfortunately what talks now. And I think after COVID, it's going to talk even more. So I don't see it changing anytime soon.
Yeah, I suppose it's definitely an interesting one. All right, like I was probably maybe a year ago or 2 years ago under the assumption that everything should stay in Croke Park because it's tradition and everything else, and it's always kind of been in Croke Park. But I think at the same time, yeah, like definitely traveling, like going down to even Cavan or Roscommon or different counties like that, like in quarterfinals, semi-finals. Like I think the final should always be in Croke Park because it's it's traditionally always been in Croke Park. Even the Leinster finals I'd probably keep in Croke Park. But I suppose your All Ireland semi-finals, your quarter-finals, that's definitely something they could experiment with because you have a state of the art stadium there in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. You've got potentially Casement Park coming in 4 or 5 years. So there's definitely room. They could definitely put it off, like in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, Casement Park. Like they'd have the attendances to do it. Like, and I suppose we've seen that 2014 semi-final. I know that game got refixed because of the American football, but there was a great attendance at that game. So it's definitely something they could experiment with.
Yeah, I was actually just going to bring that up. Like we talked about it earlier, I was there. It was absolutely amazing. And as a dub, so no interest in the game, but no side in the game, seeing those colours down. And I was like, why have we not done this more often? And you can go back to 2001 where Dublin played Kerry not once, but twice in Semple Stadium, Thurles. And they were absolutely incredible games, full houses where in Croke Park that, 50, 60,000, or though they might have sold it out, would be lost. And like the Super 8s was meant to bring us this, but it was definitely a half-arsed effort with no one thought it through at all. Like what happens in the third games when it's like, games are decided already. Like Dublin's group both years, the games were decided. And then they decided to do one game in Croke Park, one home game, one away game. Now for Dublin, that obviously meant 2 games in Croke Park. So just absolutely ridiculous. Like, and then I think, did they ever change the wording to neutral stadium? I can't even remember if they did in the end.
I think they did at one point, but I think they were putting Dublin still in Croke Park as a neutral stadium.
So like yeah, teams get to play 2 games in empty Crow Park, or Dublin, or sorry, 1 game in an empty Crow Park, and Dublin get two, as one at home, one neutral. It made no sense, and again, it was just money talks because it's season tickets. That was the excuse they used. Uh, I don't think that's a valid excuse if you want to go to Clonus, like for example, put them as a neutral venue that would definitely host the season tickets. I think someone said from the GA, or is on record as saying, because the season tickets have to be seated in Dublin season tickets. But like you go around every other county in Ireland, that's not the case. So it's just Dublin getting provincial treatment. It's not them getting. It's just GA looking for an excuse to,
Yeah.
which it borderline like it shouldn't happen. Like, and no Dublin fan wants Dublin to be in Crow Park all the time, as I said. But I don't want to get too down this rabbit hole. Like it's the GA at the end of the day, like it's the grab all association, as a few Dublin commenters would say. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just things that they're easy fixes. There's no excuse for Dublin playing Crow Park like that, unless it's All Ireland finals or semi-finals. I wouldn't mind too much, but personally, neutral venues, like give teams a small chance. Like Cavan Dublin I know it was behind closed doors, but having that in Clonus would have been a good occasion, like something a little bit different than the game being over after 20 minutes, like, you know.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I suppose there's definitely a lot for the GA and everyone else to think about. Like, and it's hard to know if they will make any changes, to be honest, because like I think like what you said before, it's gonna take probably after COVID maybe for them to actually, because at the end of the day, it's money that talks, and they'll probably need to see a drop in attendances or something to that effect, or maybe more and more people speak out about it to the point that they don't have a choice. But I suppose it's hard to see what they do at this moment in time. Anyway, who would you even see, like I suppose right now, kind of as the closest team maybe to beating Dublin? Do you think it would be Kerry, or do you think even a Tyrone, a Mayo, or even a Donegal could potentially give the Dubs a rattle in 2021?
I definitely think Kerry would be the team. And I'd have Dublin, Kerry, and then I'd have those three teams that you mentioned: Donegal, Mayo, and Tyrone. Like Tyrone, I don't know what it is about them. They just flatter to deceive me every year. As soon as I get on that Tyrone bandwagon in terms of, okay, they'll be our nearest rivals, they just don't seem to get there. And I think it might take the new coaching team there a little bit of time to get going with the players. Like it's very hard to ask from one season to come up with an All Ireland fight, like an All Ireland title, something Tyrone haven't done since 2008. So I don't think that I don't think, I really just think it's Dublin, Kerry. Like Mayo, again, those retirements are going to hit them. It'll take them 2 or 3 years. I do think they'll come back in some capacity. They're a well supported county, do a lot of fundraising there to support their county team, and you really see the fruits of it the way they've produced every single year in terms of getting to All Ireland semi-finals and finals. But for me, Kerry, like if they can just find a way to play a little, like I don't know why they're going for this defensive approach against Dublin. Like I think the way they played, like they had Dublin beaten, didn't they? Like they were 1 point up.
Yeah, I watched it recently. Actually, I think they were 2 points up, and actually in the final few minutes they were just playing it around the back. And I actually think if they had have attacked in those final, and I understand why they weren't, because they're trying to keep the ball to, because they didn't want to get turned over in midfield or up the final third. But Dublin's defence at that point was worn out, and like for example, after Dublin got the equaliser in Kerry's next attack, they scored again. So I reckon if they had gone 2 points up, 3 points up, like that would have been that. But yeah.
Yeah, no, Dave. I think it's Dave Moran got dispossessed. Like they had an
Mm.
extra man, and like you said, like we find this like playing a little bit with the club as well. You're kind of caught between two ways. You're caught between trying to be too defensive and then going for it, and you end up doing neither. So you either got to stick with one or the other. And Kerry were just kind of going down blind alleyways. Now, saying all that, it was brilliant dispossession. I think Kevin McMenamin was involved in that dispossession.
I think he
I
was,
haven't
yeah.
watched it back in a while. Yeah, I watched it in lockdown one. I watched loads of the Dublin Kerry games now, but yeah, Kerry had Dublin beat that day against 14 men. Everything went right for them and they couldn't get it done. But saying all that, it shows you that they are like, that was an incredible Dublin team, arguably a little bit better than it is now, I guess, because they're 2 more years down the line. Players are 2 years older. I think Kerry will give Dublin a serious test this year. I still think Dublin will win it, but I think Kerry are the team that will definitely put it close to them. Like Sean O'Shea, David Clifford, they just got to find a way to get their best team out on the pitch. And I saw Pat Spillane recently saying, like, out of those 6 forwards that started against Cork, like 4 of them wouldn't even be in the top 20 forwards in the county. So that might be a little bit extreme, but it just shows you that a lot of people in Kerry aren't happy that the team that was picked on the day, and they're just going for this defensive approach where 19 they kind of went pretty offensive and they had a chance, like when and like I said, that those occasions when Clifford was getting dragged by Johnny Cooper, that was just brilliant. Like, and I just think Kerry need to get back to that kick. And even in the replay, sorry, it's coming back to me now, they're playing this high ball into Paul Gainey. like I just like it's the wrong time to start doing. Like I'm not advocate for doing it, but they just kept peppering balls in, and it just wasn't working. So I think the management have a lot to answer for, because I think Kerry did have as good a team, if not a little bit better than Dublin in those years, and the Dublin management just managed to get enough to over that they get that Dublin team over the line. But I think Kerry this year, if they get their act together, which is a big if now, given what's happened the last couple of years, but I think they'll be right there. I'm pretty sure it'll be an All-Ireland final between the two teams.
Yeah, I think massive pressure on Peter Keane as well to deliver, like especially after that defensive system. Like it didn't make sense in my opinion. Like I understand with the conditions against Cork, it was probably tough for them in some certain extent as well. But I think at the same time, yeah, like setting up further down the line to beat a team and not thinking about the team that you're playing right in front of you. And they got caught with their tail between their legs in many ways, because Cork, look, listen, they could have, I had Luke Connolly on my podcast not too long ago, and he even admitted like he was going for the point. He wasn't, he wasn't floating a ball in or anything like that. Sometimes you need a bit of luck in those moments, but I think when you set up the way Kerry set up, then you're kind of inviting that kind of bad luck to happen, I suppose.
Well, even and going back to something Pat Gilroy said, 2012, he openly admitted he had his eyes on Donegal that year, and he had his team.
Yeah.
He had his team a little bit like, and that was exactly the same that happened to Kerry. Like their eye took their eye off the ball. Like it happens, and it's not a case that Pat Gilroy was like 100% all in Donegal. He just had 5-10% of his mind and 5 or 10% of the players, and that's all it takes. And like Dublin got up to a terrible start that day. Kerry never managed to get Cork beat when they should have, and then it all happened. But go back to Dublin, this just doesn't happen with Dublin. Like they're just so, like, I arguably think their most impressive performances are when they're expected to beat a team by 13 points and they actually go out and beat them by 13 or 14 points. Do you know what I mean? Like you'd be out
Yeah.
Carlo going, maybe Carlo now, Dublin, sure, how would you get up for this game? It's a game against Carlo in Croke Park or away in Portlaoise or whatever, and they just get it done. Like it's just a well-oiled machine that's well drilled, and like that's proper good coaching. Like that other counties should be able to do that little bit of rootlessness. So that's not down to money now. That's Dublin being switched on from minute one. And it's not replicated in other counties or like Kerry. I think it's just Dublin, because they've won so many All Irelands, they freaked Kerry out completely after winning the 5 in a row. Like, and as we touched, Kerry probably should have won that final, and the fact they didn't, they overthought last year, and whether they've got their act together this year remains to be seen. But like it is interesting that like other managers, like I said, Pat Gilroy, have taken their eye off the ball. Focus on the All Ireland final, and loads of teams like Donegal obviously losing to Cavan last year, like per prime example too.
Yeah, and I suppose as well, like obviously with the Dubs, like I suppose you had that whole training breach situation. Like, do you think that will even fire the Dubs up even more now going into the league alongside Kerry, Galway, and Roscommon? Like I have a sneaky feeling anyway that because of the outrage, by everyone in the media, I suppose that they're gonna come out, I suppose, all guns blazing, I suppose, in these next 3 games.
Well, it's as if Dublin don't need any more motivation. So, like, what's going to be
Yeah.
different from the 70th in a row? Of the whole of the country hates us now. So that's, and if anyone asking you like who to watch out for this year, just really those 9 or 10 players that were at that training session. The fact they'd go against all those guidelines and risk all that just to get that extra 1%. I know, like, it was terrible. They shouldn't have done it, but it just shows you, Jesus, like the rootlessness and the desire, like, to get up at 6 in the morning to train, when no matches inside. Obviously they shouldn't have done it, like, and to be honest, not to go over all ground, but like whether other counties are doing it or not, it's pretty irrelevant. Like the fact is, people are in training. Like my club team wasn't training, and seeing them training, pictured as well wasn't ideal. But obviously that's kind of shit past, and they're punished, and I think everyone needs to move on from it. Like, but yeah, it's just going to give them extra motivation. And yeah, personally, I'll be watching out for those 9 or 10 lads, particularly the couple of lads who live near me from Coola, who drove all the way out to Innis Falls to train 6 in the morning. I think that they're looking pretty. They really want their place this year, let's just say. So I'm amazed at the dedication, and obviously they shouldn't have done it, but you have to kind of laugh at these things as well, like.
Yeah, I suppose the rules are there for a reason, but I agree with you at the same time. Like, I think definitely, I suppose, shows some amount of dedication, and I suppose balls in many ways actually to go and do that. Like, especially because I'm sure they would have known the outcome as well. They would have probably known as if they get caught, like, this is going to be the outrage. I suppose as well, like, looking at obviously the under 20s at the moment as well. Just moving on from that, like, I suppose you kind of touched on Kieran Archer coming through. Like he's potentially going to be, I don't know if he's got called up to the panel yet, but he's potentially, in line, I think, to come in, and potentially a few more players as well. Like, would you see some of those young lads coming into the team, or even many changes in the Dublin panel in 2021?
Yeah, like I'm kind of 50-50 because like Dublin's average age for the starting 15 in the All-Ireland Finals, I think he was 28, and without take Clucks now that, and it goes down a year to 27. So like it's right at that peak. And obviously that didn't include like Brian Howard and Mannion, although they're still kind of around that age, so they wouldn't put that age up at all. So like you had Bulger and Small who'd be that 22 mark, and then other than that, like everyone was kind of 20 around that 25, 27 age, and then obviously the couple of 30-year-olds who carried it. So I'd say someone like Kieran Archer would be pretty close to being on the bench. I think Desi really wants to put his own stamp on the team. Like I know that's probably a stupid thing to say. Like he'll take an All-Ireland anyway he can get with any players. But I did think it was interesting that Mannion, I know there was a few things rumoured about what happened with Mannion, but the fact with Mannion and Brian Howard in particular didn't start that final, particularly one out of the two, I think it just shows that Desi's like this. It's going to be my team, and maybe he overdid that a little bit. Like you have to judge Dublin on their standards. I know they won the All-Ireland, but they're a far better team with Brian Howard, like who I know Dermot Connolly came out recently saying he'd expect him to partner Fenton. I'd expect that too. But go back to your question. Yeah, I think someone like Kieran Archer, like that under 20 team got to the All-Ireland final last year. There's definitely a few players there that could potentially step up to the panel. You have to remember, like, that's a year below what it's usually. Like usually it's under 21s until the changes were made, I don't know, 2018 or something. So obviously that's a shorter step. That extra year shows that it might be another year or two before some of those under 20 players from last year come up. It just depends. It's hard to know. Like it's obviously like when a Premier League team goes back in pre-season, you know everyone who's there. The GA is a lot harder. Like it's even trying to find out who's training with who, and unless you know a few people, like you're not really going to find out until the first league game, which is why I was so interested. Like the hurling last week, just seeing who's starting, who's on the bench. Oh, he's playing. He started for the hurlers. That's interesting. So yeah, time will tell on that. I think that one or two players, but I think by and large, like this group of players, I don't know whether it's COVID or not, and they've nothing else to do, just keep going. But like is Cluxton ever going to retire? Like,
Yeah.
Probably not. And like Dublin, and I think Dublin do need Cluxton in particular. Like he is a vital cog. So I would say when he goes, there will be a natural drop off, with that couple of percent, because there has to be. Like he's the greatest goalkeeper to ever play GA, and he's changed that position forever. Like so. But yeah, I think Kieran Archer, like he's unreal. I don't know if you've seen him like underage, but every time I watch him, like he is the real deal. Like, and yeah, I think if he'd be on the fringes maybe to get on, but like I said, he'll be in and he'll be like number 40 probably, and he has to work his way up like the rest of them. Like it's man.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah, like, and yeah, because I suppose with Paul Mannion opting out, like in Paddy Andrews retiring, like there's definitely a space there, anyways. But I suppose like plenty of good club players and loads of other players coming through the ranks at the moment as well. Obviously, you were touching on the Dublin hurlers there as well. Like we'll discuss them, I suppose, briefly. Like obviously at the weekend, I suppose nothing really kind of too much to look into with the Kilkenny defeat. It wasn't really a game with much intensity, I suppose, a bit of a challenge game, I suppose, in many ways. But what are your thoughts on the Dublin hurlers at the minute, anyway?
Yeah, like it almost felt like we'd seen that game. I know there was the lack of intensity, but I was watching it going, I've seen this game 1,000 times. We're level with Kilkenny with like, last quarter, and we're just going to lose this by 3 or 4 points. Someone gets a stupid red. The Dublin hurlers, like, and everyone can debate the money. Like, it's just everyone see, like, you look at like Conor Callan's the best, one of the best. I don't want to say he's the best hurler in the country because that's, probably unfair. And it's the best club hurler in the country, and he's playing for the footballers. Like, and the Dublin hurlers, like, we just don't have that. Like the best 5 or 6 players are playing football. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, even go back to Dermot Connolly, like he was a pretty good hurler and he was playing with the footballers. So they're always going to have that issue. Like I thought it was interesting. Sean Brennan started in goal. Whether he gets the number 1 spot this year, like he's obviously worked under Matty Kenny at Kula, winning those couple of All-Ireland club. I was surprised he didn't get it ahead over the last couple of years, or didn't get the number 1 spot, because I thought his club performance was pretty solid. But like you say, there was a lack of intensity. It was hard to read into things. I think it was somewhere in the middle between a challenge game and a league game. I think Dublin have their work cut out against Antrim in the championship, to be honest with you. And I have a tendency to get carried away with league performances at the best of times, but a lot of excuses coming out of Clare I saw, and I'm just like there weren't those excuses when you were, I think, 5 or 6 up after 13 minutes. There was a long trip. Like that's when the long trip happens, the first few minutes. And I just think there were a few really good performances. They seemed to got their act together, Antrim, and They got a lot of grief from Donald Cusick in particular after winning the Joe McDonagh. He said they're going to get a lot of beatings in the Liam McCarthy, and then he kind of doubled down there in the Sunday game last night, which I was like, fair play.
Yeah,
If you're
yeah.
going to stick to your
He kind
guns,
of he just didn't want to admit he was wrong. Like he was just like
yeah,
he kind of admitted he was wrong and then said, "But I still think they'll struggle."
yeah. I begrudgingly kind of went, you know what, I don't like you anymore, but you've gone up respect even more, if that makes sense. But yeah, like I think Dublin, like it's like remember the year, was it 2 years ago they Laois they beaten Jesus, I can't remember, everything locked down, but anyway they lost to Laois after beating Galway, wasn't it, to
Yeah, that's
qualify
right.
for the
Yeah.
oh Jesus, yeah, I remember that. That's the kind of Dublin hurling mentality that needs to change, similar to what the footballers was a few years ago. And it's not a case that these lads are taking their eye off the ball. It's just 1 or 2%. That's all we're talking. And you end up losing these games because the level's so huge. So I wouldn't hold up too much hope for the hurlers this year. I just feel like it's a deja vu coming, whether even if we get over Antrim, I can see us not quite getting to a Leinster final, and then qualifiers, all Ireland quarterfinal at best. Which is a pity because there's some good hurlers there, but as I said, half of them are playing for the footballers, which it's not happening in other counties really. Like it's not happening in Limerick, it's not happening in Tipperary, it's not happening in Kilkenny, obviously. Whereas Dublin don't have their best hurlers to call upon, so it's going to take its toll. I know that we've an unlimited supply of footballers and hurlers in this county, but it does kind of take its toll eventually, I think. So yeah, like not that I took too much out of Kilkenny, I just think it's going to be the same old story for Dublin. And in fact, I think Antrim are really going to put it up to them in the Leinster quarterfinal.
Yeah, I think so as well. Like I was even saying that even before the Clare game. Like I think Antrim has like a tremendous amount of talent in that team at the moment. Like with Conor McCann and like Neil McManus didn't even play in any of the Joe McDonagh Cup games other than the final. Like he came off the bench. And he's like a top, yeah. Like that point he scored, where he sold David Reedy the dummy and then just put it over the bar from inside his own half. Like it's next level stuff.
But he sold him the dummy, and if you watch it again, like he only got like a yard on him, so it just gave him that extra second. But like it was about like that much away from being blocked, and it sailed straight over the bar, 68th minute. And I think that was a big win for Antrim. I know, again, 3 weeks training, but like I think a lot of results went pretty much as expected, which kind of shows that a lot of excuses coming out Clare. I personally think Antrim will do well this year. Before that game, and even more so now. But yeah, it was incredible stuff. Whether that takes a lot out of them, but they've kind of done their bit in the league now, and Liam McCarthy's obviously the aim for them, and they'll be well aware, let's put it that way, of some comments being made about them stepping up. Because yeah, the thing that annoyed me with Donald Logue was like he was basing it on that Joe McDonagh final, which wasn't a great game, to be honest. I watched it myself, but like these, he was clear he hadn't seen Antrim. He was basing it on that one game, and I just thought it was a little bit unfair considering, like, well, like he was involved in Clare, and now I'm sure, well, on that basis, I guess Clare are going to take an awful lot of beatings this year, like, but we'll see.
Yeah. I suppose it'd be hard to see with Limerick's success obviously at the moment. Like they're the top dogs in hurling at the moment after last year's All Ireland success, and you've Galway and who probably aren't too far away. Waterford we seen last year, Tipperary were champions in 2019. So I suppose it's hard to see if Dublin can get to that level in the next 4 to 5 years. Like realistically speaking, there's probably going to need to be a new crop of players coming through at under 20 level, or coming from minors to under 20s and then to senior level before realistically we can say that Dublin are going to win an All Ireland or at least challenge anyways.
Yeah, like you said, like we need a good underage team coming through and staying together. But like a lot, like as I said, like a lot of lads will play minor hurling, maybe under 21 hurling, and end up going with those footballers. Like if you had a choice, like look at the glory of the footballers, or there's a big project in hurling, and I personally think Matty Kenny could do a good job there. But like, how long is he A, willing to do it, and B, are Dublin willing to go down a road and maybe 3-4 years look ahead? You mentioned like those counties, like what the majority of them have in common is hurling is their number one sport. Like Limerick, or JB McManus has done great work supporting the underage structures there, but it's all hurling. Like obviously they're doing work in football as well, I'm not saying that, but 90% particularly at inter-county level is geared towards hurling, and you see that come to fruition. And I actually think Limerick are a little bit ahead of everyone, and I think they'll retain Liam again this year, to be honest with you, because I think it's a similar trajectory to what the Dublin footballers were on, where 2012 they took their eye off the ball. Like as I mentioned, I'm pretty sure Limerick did the same against Kilkenny last year, rectified it this year, and I think they kind of learn from that, and they'll end up winning that All Ireland, or win the All Ireland this year. But maybe someone like Tipperary will put it up to them. But Yeah, I don't know. I think Kilkenny are a little bit below. I think Galway are somewhere in the middle. Like, you don't know what you're going to expect. But and I think Waterford, unfortunately, we've seen it before. They do well one year and they don't do it the next. I don't know what's happening there. But for Dublin to get anywhere near Limerick's level, it's going to, like you said, 4 or 5 years. And there has to be a project or something to back, and something to convince a few lads to play the hurling. Like, I'm not saying like lads aren't, there's not like 100 lads choosing footballers, but all it is those 3 or 4 lads that are playing football over hurling, and you're not going to be able to compete with Limerick. Like,
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. Like, definitely, like, I suppose with Limerick there, and you look at their underage structure at the moment as well, and even Cork have got a good underage structure as well. Like, it's just very hard to see how Dublin can I suppose claw that difference back, at least, you know, for the next 4 to 5 years. But you never know. Like, you could have a situation maybe where a lot of the senior Dublin footballers get older and potentially like Conal Keeney go down and play hurling. I was surprised that Dermot Connolly didn't join the hurlers. I know there was rumours there for a while. I thought he would have, to be honest, but maybe he just didn't fancy it. Um,
that is interesting that he didn't. Yeah, I don't know whether he
mm,
just didn't like the management. He probably just wasn't arsed really, which is fair
yeah,
enough.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, like the fact we haven't maybe seen more players do that since Conal Keeney, I don't know. It probably doesn't speak too well for the hurlers. Like, but.
Hmm. I suppose tackling sport. Obviously, you're the co-founder of that. Like, how did that come about? And I suppose how would you describe what it is? I suppose to anyone who's listening and probably hasn't seen it before.
Yeah, so it basically came from like I was meant to be going to Australia before lockdown, or before COVID in March, which obviously I think we were flying out in April or May, so obviously that didn't happen. So I was kind of like I was working like in corporate sales and Vodafone, and basically long story short, a bit of time on my hands, decided to set up a sports podcast, which is something I always wanted to do, and I did it with my younger brother. Like, so like we're both kind of sport mad, and we wanted to kind of have a combination of interviewing like really interesting sports people, while also doing a bit of a show and maybe like kind of previews and reviews of stuff. So yeah, it started off, it went really well, and what we've kind of done is moved it to more of a like we still produce podcasts like twice a week, but it's more like we do the shows live and then upload them as podcasts after as well. So just to try and get people involved, because I think the ultimate kind of goal of what we're trying to do is just have like a sports show,
Hmm.
you know, a few times a week. Obviously I'm working full time, Sean's in college as well at the moment, so it's difficult, but at the moment, like basically Monday nights, Thursday nights, we're basically doing like sports show. We try and cover as many sports as we can. I think it's important because we've so much passion. Like, I have so much other sports outside of GAA that I support, and I think a lot of people are in that boat as well. That like there's GAA fans, that are Premier League fans, that are League of Ireland fans, that are rugby fans, that are boxing fans, that are cricket fans, that are horse racing fans. Goes on and on. So we try and gear the show around the best events, while also trying to get interesting guests on to break that up with interviews and stuff. So we're just kind of trying to build a bit of following on YouTube, try and get a bit of interaction. And to be honest, it's the great crack when we're doing like, we do like Premier League fan predictions on, that's every Thursday night, and basically it's winner stays on, correct scores out of the 10, and we'd someone win like 7 in a row, like one of my mates, which is basically 7 coin flips. So that was a bit of crack, and just having lads in the comments and stuff like that. So yeah, if you're interested at tackling sport on all social media, we put a lot of good sports content up there, and basically we're interested in, like, if you have any good ideas for interviews or shows. But that's essentially it. We like, say for example, yeah, Monday night, if tonight we're doing like a, you know, football league preview, hurling league review, might get more into those download comments, that kind of stuff. So it's good, and we try and get as many people on the show as possible, because I know before I set up the podcast, I would have loved a show like Tackling Sport, where I could go on and talk nonsense about the Premier League, or go on and talk even more nonsense about GA. So again, if anyone's interested in being on the show, let us know again at Tackling Sport. But yeah, it's been going for maybe 8 or 9 months at this stage, and enjoying it at the moment. But like you've obviously got great stuff here with GA Fan TV. So if we can be half successful as you now, we'd be happy out. Like, but I said it's great what you're doing. Like you said, you're giving it the voice to fans, and we're probably doing something similar in more of a sports overall context as well. So.
Yeah, I think that's the way of the future in many ways. I think, like, you know, I think obviously with mainstream media, like, they'll always have a big pull, and rightly so. And I think it's always a great idea to get the pros on and everything else. Like, I feel like they have a different analysis, you know, to obviously a lot of us. But I think as a fan, you have a different level, you have a different perspective on, you know, whether it be football, hurling, soccer, or whatever sport you're covering. Then when you actually played as well, like, I think it's two different perspectives, and I think that's what I think it's probably drawn a lot of people to a lot of the fan content, especially over in England and Scotland, and I suppose in all the other countries as well.
Yeah, well, like even they say we would get like all sorts of fans for like Premier League clubs, and you get like a Chelsea fan on, and I'd have like a certain opinion of stuff, and they'd give you an insight because they watch, like, while I'd watch Chelsea every week, I wouldn't I'd be watching the other team, you know. I'd watch it in the background if I'm on my phone mostly, which is how, let's be honest, 99% of us consume Premier League games these days. But you just get a bit of a different insight, and like you said, the ex-pros, like I remember Gary Neville saying something to Jamie Carragher where he's like, oh, I haven't watched as much Liverpool as you this season. I was kind of, first of all, thinking like, you're a Sky Sports pundit, you should be watching their staggered kickoffs this season. So I think in a way, like, fans and football fans or GA fans, we end up watching more of the sport than ex-pros because they're probably not as into it as us. Maybe if that might be harsh and that's a generalization, but I think it bears fruition in most places. So I think it's really important to get as many fans on as possible. I'm always amazed, like, we do that Premier League predictions, and as I said, we all talk nonsense about the Premier League for an hour, but I'm amazed at everyone's knowledge who comes on, and everyone's got a different perspective, and you're always like, geez, yeah, I haven't heard that. Geez, I'm not sure about that now. But like you said, that fan content and like Arsenal Fan TV, I know people give a lot of criticism, but I found a bit of comfort watching a few of the AFTV lads on Thursday night myself. I was like, it could always be worse. Could have.
Yeah, I only ever tune in when they lose. Like, I feel I'm bad. I don't know. I'm one of them that, you know, that falls into the trap, you know, and only tunes in anytime they lose. Like, I don't even have that much interest in Arsenal really. I wouldn't watch any of their games, but as soon as they lose, I'm literally the first person checking to see if they've uploaded, and it's always the same people as well, like DT and Ty, and I suppose rest in peace Claude, like obviously him as well.
Yeah, they're like, it was DT and then Troops. I know Troops works for Barstool now, so he's gone too mainstream now. He's doing it for the cameras. But even when he comes on back to Arsenal Fan TV, he's just normal. But these lads, like, they watch the club, while they're not like amazingly tactical insight, and when you kind of like DT, for example, when you take away the shouting, he actually talks a lot of sense, and he knows the club, so you actually end up learning a little bit more of that. I don't know, Ray Parda doesn't give you that. I don't think Ray Parda gives you much, bar a few good stories, like, but when you're looking for that kind of fan reaction, or it's a reason it's gotten big, and you obviously know this from GA Fan TV, like, the reason it's gotten big is because people want to hear what in the immediate aftermath about, are they someone feeling the same way about them, and agreeing with them, or giving them a different perspective, which, like, if you watch the Dublin Mail analysis after the game, they're all talking about Dublin funding. Like, no fans are talking about Dublin funding in that moment. Like, they wanted to talk about the game and what it means to Dublin winning All Ireland. It doesn't mean as much as it does in previous years. They're the conversations you want to have, not down to the same old stuff in RT, which again, they're obviously stuck for time and stuff, and it gives people that voice. But yeah, like I said, we love getting people on the podcast, and you obviously love the same, and it's great having those conversations, like, and it's something that hasn't really kicked off in Ireland as much as England. That's obviously due to the Premier League, really. I guess GA is probably the main place where it will kick off, and it's obviously kicking off here already, like with you guys, but it just shows you that that's definitely just going to build and build, and you look back in 5 years wondering how it took so long for these channels like yourself to get so big, like.
100%, yeah. No, well, I appreciate the support there anyways, and look, listen, I'll link down Tackling Sport down below for anyone to check it out. So look, listen, Daniel, anyway, cheers for coming on, appreciate your time.
No worries, thanks for having me on.